Most people hear the name Machiavelli and instantly think of one word: evil, manipulative, heartless, dangerous. But let me ask you something before we go any further. Who told you that? Was it history? Or was it people who benefited from you never reading him properly? Because here's the uncomfortable truth. Machiavelli wasn't evil. He was honest in a world built on lies. And honesty, when it exposes power, is often mistaken for cruelty. Today, we're going to talk about why Machiavelli is so hated, what he actually said in The Prince, and why his ideas still make people uncomfortable, especially powerful people. And while we do that, I want you to think, not agree with me, not defend Machiavelli, just think. Because once you see what he was really doing, you can't unsee it. Before we begin, if you enjoy deep psychology, power, philosophy, and uncomfortable truths, like the video. It tells the algorithm you're ready for real thinking. And subscribe, because this channel doesn't deal in comforting lies. Now let's begin. Why Machiavelli is called evil. Let's start with the accusation. People say Machiavelli encouraged cruelty, that he promoted manipulation, that he believed morality should be sacrificed for power. But here's a simple question. Did he create these behaviors, or did he simply describe them? Think about it. If a doctor describes a disease, is the doctor evil, or is the disease just ugly to look at? Machiavelli lived in a brutal world. 15th century Italy was not polite. It was not ethical. It was not fair. It was violent, unstable, and ruled by betrayal. Kings lied, popes schemed, allies turned overnight. And Machiavelli didn't sit in a classroom imagining how power should work. He watched how power actually worked. That's the first thing people miss. Machiavelli wasn't writing philosophy for saints. He was writing a survival manual for rulers. And survival is rarely pretty.
So let me ask you something. If you lived in a world where being good got you killed, would you still worship goodness? Or would you start respecting effectiveness? The lie we're taught about power. From a young age, most of us are fed a comforting story. Be kind and people will respect you. Be honest and you'll succeed. Good always wins in the end. And we want to believe that. But look around. Really look. Do the most powerful people rise because they're the kindest, or because they understand human nature better than others? Machiavelli noticed something most people refuse to admit. Humans admire virtue, but obey strength. They praise morality, but follow authority. And when forced to choose, they often choose security over goodness. That doesn't mean people are evil. It means people are afraid. And Machiavelli was brave enough to say that out loud. So when people say Machiavelli promotes evil, what they really mean is Machiavelli makes me uncomfortable because he removes the illusion. Was he telling rulers to be cruel? Here's where things get misunderstood. Machiavelli never said, be cruel for pleasure. He said cruelty should be controlled, calculated, and purposeful. That's very different. He believed unnecessary cruelty creates hatred, but selective severity creates order. And history proves this again and again. Let me ask you, would you rather live under a leader who pretends to be kind but lets chaos grow, or one who enforces harsh rules once and creates long-term stability? That's not a moral question. That's a psychological one. Machiavelli understood something modern psychology later confirmed. People don't fear rules, they fear uncertainty, and weak leaders create uncertainty. The most misquoted line in history. You've heard it before. It is better to be feared than loved. Sounds brutal, right? But people forget the second half. Machiavelli also said a ruler should avoid being hated. Fear without hatred. That's the balance. And here's the deeper meaning people ignore. Love is conditional.
Fear is predictable. Love depends on emotions. Fear depends on consequences. When times are good, people love you. When times are bad, love disappears. But fear? Fear stays consistent. Not panic, not terror, but the awareness that crossing certain lines has consequences. Let me ask you honestly, in your own life, who do people respect more? The person who is endlessly nice, or the person who is calm, firm, and not easily crossed? That's Machiavelli's point. Not evil, just observation. Why honest truth sounds dark. Here's the uncomfortable part. Machiavelli didn't sugarcoat reality. He didn't say, this is how things should be. He said, this is how things are. And people hate that because it removes excuses. It forces responsibility. If power is about perception, control, and timing, then failure isn't bad luck, it's ignorance. And ignorance feels better than accountability. So instead of accepting reality, people labeled Machiavelli immoral. It was easier. Ask yourself this. If Machiavelli were truly evil, why do his ideas keep working? Why do leaders still follow his principles quietly? Why do corporations, governments, and institutions behave exactly as he described? Maybe the problem isn't Machiavelli. Maybe the problem is that he was too accurate. Modern psychology versus Machiavelli. What's fascinating is this. Modern psychology backs him up. Studies show people trust confident authority more than kindness alone. People feel safer under firm leadership. Clear rules reduce anxiety. Machiavelli knew this without experiments. He watched people. He understood fear, loyalty, ambition, and self-interest. Not because he loved darkness, but because he refused to lie about light. And here's a question for you. If understanding human flaws helps you protect yourself, is that knowledge evil? Or is it dangerous only to those who abuse it? Fire can warm a home. Fire can burn it down.
Is fire evil? Or is intention what matters? Why young men are drawn to Machiavelli? There's a reason young men especially feel drawn to his work. Because young men quickly learn a painful lesson. Being good doesn't guarantee being respected. Being honest doesn't guarantee being rewarded. And nobody prepares you for that. Machiavelli doesn't comfort you, he equips you. He says, here is how the world works. Now decide who you want to be. That's empowering, but also frightening. Because once you understand power, you can no longer pretend you're powerless, and responsibility is heavier than innocence. Is Machiavelli moral or immoral? Here's the paradox. Machiavelli removed morality from politics to expose hypocrisy. He believed rulers pretending to be moral were often the most dangerous because they justified cruelty as virtue. At least an honest ruler knows what they're doing. So ask yourself, is it more dangerous to face a wolf or a wolf pretending to be a sheep? Machiavelli would say the second one, every time. The real reason he was hated. Machiavelli didn't threaten kings, he threatened illusions. And illusions are how power maintains control. When people believe power is gentle, fair, and benevolent, they don't question it. But when someone says power is strategic, calculated, and self-interested, people wake up, and power hates being seen clearly. That's why Machiavelli was demonized, not because he was wrong, but because he was useful. So, was he evil? Let me ask you directly. If telling the truth makes people uncomfortable, is the truth evil? If exposing how power works removes your innocence, was innocence protecting you or limiting you? Machiavelli didn't ask you to be cruel, he asked you to be aware. And awareness is dangerous, especially to those who benefit from your ignorance. If this video made you think, not agree, not disagree, but think, like the video. And if you want more dark philosophy, power psychology, and honest conversations, subscribe, because the world doesn't need more comfort, it needs clarity.
Machiavelli wasn't evil. He was honest, and honesty in a dishonest world will always look dark.